You are there.
Okay.
There's the camera there.
Well, hello, everybody. We might start up there. So welcome to the people that are in the room with their complimentary coffees and cookies and sushi. And welcome to everybody online. And it's great to see so many familiar names to the people online too. So very happy that you could join us today. This is a joint initiative between Griffith University and the Modern Language Teachers Association of Queensland. And we'll be recording it as a Zoom meeting, so that that link will come out later for any of your colleagues that hear about it and missed it, so you can tell them that that will be available in a few days once it's been edited. So it's my, Kata and I are very happy to present Catherine, as everybody knows, because the past president of the state MLTAQ in Queensland. And it's great to have Monique Francis coming from Melbourne with us today from lockdown. So we've been thinking about you guys down there. So what motivates me and what motivates my students. So thanks very much, Catherine and Monique.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Lee. So I hope this is. Let us know if it's not, if the way we're trying to manage all of these devices isn't working for you all. So thank you, Lee. As Lee said, I'm Catherine Tominaga. I'm a primary school teacher of Japanese. I teach across 3 schools in years 3 to 6. I've been teaching for 15 years, and I started learning Japanese 42 years ago. And across to Monique.
Okay, thanks, Catherine.
Really big voice, Monique, because the people here in the room are hearing through my device. Okay.
Right. Okay. All right. Thanks very much, Catherine, and so lovely to be here, part of your community. I'm Monique. I'm a primary and secondary school teacher, currently teaching at 2 schools from years 5 to year 10. I've been teaching for about 30 years, and I started learning Japanese 25 years ago. So we'd like to start off with asking you all a few questions. So you've got your honesty hat on. Do you remember, and what we mean is really remember, what it felt like to be that beginning learner, language learner? You know, the thrill of understanding and then saying your first sentence. Do you remember the nervous anxiety as you experimented with the new sounds of the new language? Do you remember the excitement of that very first interaction with a native speaker?
Okay, this is going to be interesting. The swiveling, sorry. That first time, Monique. The very first time, 42 years ago. No, is the short answer, but I'm not sure about everyone who's with us here today. But no, I certainly cannot remember exactly how that felt. I can imagine how it felt, but it's very hard to remember. But so this year, Monique and I have put ourselves back in the place of our students and started a new language, German, from scratch, in an effort to better understand our students and better understand ourselves as teachers. And in the process, we have revisited many of the emotions of the beginner student experiencing highs and lows. And what a privilege it has been. A privilege that we don't think most, if not all other subjects teachers of all other subjects would have the opportunity to experience. We'd like to share with you today what we've learned along the way, including some practical examples from our classroom that have been directly inspired by the activities that we've done in our German lessons. What motivates Monique and I as languages teachers, and what have we trialed this year in our effort to foster motivation in our students? What has worked and what needs a little further tweaking?
So 2020 has been a year of lots of things, but it's also been a year of self-reflection for both Catherine and me. Today, we would like to share a little of the journey with you. In particular, a little of our German acquisition journey, our student experience, and talk about some of the specific activities that we've been using in our classroom, the purpose of those activities, and the results that have shown, they have shown. And of course, if anything is particular interest to you, we're very happy to share some research or further information if you'd like to look into that a little bit further. So to set the scene, I'd like to share a 5-minute promo video that was made as part of an action research project that I was involved in with the Catholic Education Office down here in Victoria. So my project looked at the self-determination theory and factors affecting intrinsic motivation. Really, really passionate about, you know, what is it that deep intrinsic thing that motivates us, and in particular our students. So, so in fact, throughout the Action Research Project period, there were 2 parallel reflective processes occurring. Me as student, reflecting on what was motivating me in my German classes, and me as the teacher, applying these approaches in my classes and reflecting on the motivation changes of my students. Apologies for the sound quality there, but I'm happy to share the link afterwards if you're interested in having a look at that a little bit closer. So, well, basically, Catherine and I have become a little bit obsessed with finding the buzz, as Buzzboy at the end mentioned. And, you know, that's for us what it's about. You know, when we see our students catch on and, you know, light up with that, when they comprehend it and when they do see the success that they are having. And that's exactly that buzz that we got in our first few lessons in German. So back to where it all began. So while attending an online conference, this was during the Easter holidays, we were really struck by a remark made by one of the presenters. And he spoke to us of the value as language teachers for us to gain a deeper understanding of our students' perspective by revisiting the languages classroom as a student. Languages teachers, as Catherine has mentioned, we're really in a unique position to be able to have a similar experience to our students by learning another language, and preferably one that's very different from the one we teach. And, you know, as we've said, we're not too sure whether there are other subject teachers in other subjects who can really have the experience so similar to their students' experience. So we are in a lucky position. So we've both been using TPRS, which is Teaching Proficiency Through Reading and Storytelling. We've been using this methodology for a number of years now, but we knew that we needed to refine our skills in this method further. So on this slide, for those of you that may not be familiar with TPRS, it'll give you a little bit of a brief overview of what it is. And we'll just give you a moment to read through that. So the decision to learn German as students in a TPRS classroom offered so many benefits to us. Firstly, we could learn more about the skills of TPRS teaching by observing our teacher. We could better understand our own students by becoming students again ourselves, very powerful. And we could acquire some German in the process, and that's a win-win-win.
So on the 15th of April, we had our first German lesson. The lessons are online, and our teacher is actually based in Korea. and students are scattered around the world. It is just the most amazing experience. A typical lesson begins with oral input. After a little bit of housekeeping and explanation of the process, the listening and the talking begins straight away, first lesson. In any TPRS training that we had done previously, it had always been emphasized how much the teacher needed to slow down the pace of the lesson, the pace of the teacher's language, how much language was being covered in a lesson. And this had always been very strongly emphasized. And whether that PD might be for TPRS or just other comprehensible input methods, this was something that was always very much, the presenters would always say, no matter how slow you think you're going, no matter how much you think you're going slow enough, go much slower. And when you think you're going slow enough, go slower again. And there's just sort of no limit to how slowly you could potentially go, is the sort of message that we receive. And yet it's very hard to, oh, that's, is it? Oh, somebody else. That's right. There we go. It's all right. No, it's fine. Thank you. No, I'm good. Thank you. No, it's all good. It's fine. And until we were there in that position of being the student in the German classroom in a language that we had, we were completely new to, it's just very hard to really grasp how slow it needs to be. But we do feel we got a much better handle on that whole concept. And what is the best pace to make sure that our students are going to feel comfortable, that they're not going to feel like they're being forced to produce output before they're ready. And we think that this has probably been our greatest takeaway from this student experience. The fact that going slow actually leads to faster acquisition has been quite, transformative. Anyway, that's where we're at. So in that first lesson, the teacher directed us through various questions and answers around the class. We had, whole class responses, one-word responses. The language was very contained, kept within our grasp. And as confidence built, we moved on to full sentence answers by individuals. And then eventually at various points throughout the lesson, the teacher would put on a timer for maybe 30 seconds or 40 seconds. And we would, because we were in an online class, it's like Zoom here, we would all mute our microphones and just chat away. We had, and chat away trying to recap and say as much as we could of what had been covered in the lesson so far. And I don't want to press anymore. Oh, there we go. So all the while, there's a slide, a PowerPoint slide displayed, and we've got that language there to use. And this is a typical kind of content from that first lesson. And so there we were answering questions in German and having a go at all of these different things. And it was, it was very, very guided by the teacher at all times. It was always kept in very tight control. At the end of the lesson, we were given one little homework task and that was to take a moment away from the lesson, no longer with the language in front of us, to just on our phones, record ourselves saying whatever we could remember from the lesson, just whatever we could say, just say a few sentences, whatever we could do. It didn't matter how much or how little. And that was a little bit daunting, but it was just us talking to ourselves. There's no pressure really. And so we did that. When I look back now, I still have that first recording that I made back on the 15th of April. I'm really surprised to see that I actually spoke for 2 minutes. So that feels nice to think that I could speak for 2 minutes after my first lesson. There's a bit of repeating myself, I'm sure, but it was all great practice. I asked questions, I did all sorts of things. So we had our first lesson, the lesson was finished, I'd done my little bit of homework. My work for the week as a student was done. But it was actually at this point where the magic for me as a teacher really began. The magic that Monique and I believe has been the major factor in our growth and the growth of our students this year.
Yeah, so Catherine and I, we've really embraced this self-reflection like never before. In fact, I've said to Catherine, I haven't done this much self-reflection since I was at uni, but honestly, it's been, yeah, it's had a really big impact, and being able to share reflections with a colleague like this has made a big impact. So at the end of every German lesson, there's a dedicated time to debrief with the others in the class, the teachers and the other students. There's also a shared document that was created by our German teacher, and we're invited to jot down our reflections there as well. But those of you who know Catherine would not be surprised by this. Catherine and I don't stop there. We often message each other with further debriefing notes, and we'll discuss what we've experienced in class and how it might or might not transfer to our own context. And as I know that you would know, teaching Japanese is a very different scenario from German. So we consider the adjustments that we might need to make for our context. And as we were preparing for today's presentation, we went back into the shared Google slide document and took a look back at some of our reflections from our very first German lessons. So here are a few examples. I'm not sure, Catherine, did you want to share some of yours there?
Yeah, people can have a look, but one that, as I was going back through this document, our lessons now, we're up to about 26 weeks or so, are we, into our lessons, but looking back at this and I see it week 19, so, 5 months in, and we have a German teacher in the room, yes. So here I was, 5 months, and we had studied, you saw the first slide from what our first lesson was like, the sort of content that we were talking about. And here I was 5 months in with one lesson a week. We're doing one lesson a week. And I'm thinking, I'm starting to feel comfortable with the difference between es gibt, there is, and ich bin, I am. It's a really basic concept. And for us Japanese teachers, and Monique and I have experienced this in our classrooms as well, for our students to get that difference, that understanding, to really understand and not have to think about the difference between ga imasu and des. It's been really interesting to observe. And so, yeah, I'm thinking, right, we really do need to go slow and give our students time to really get comfortable with that. So that's one of mine. All of those are all valid, reflections. Monique?
The week 8 for me, which isn't up there, but I noted that there was an introduction of a new grammar structure that put me, this is what I've written, put me in a spin initially, and I felt my confidence shake a little. So it was a really, really good reminder for me about how my students would feel, and again reminded me that slow equals good. So yeah, it does promote empathy, I think, for our students, and particularly our slower processing students. So we set up a shared Google Drive to collaborate on resources, and we have a reflection document in there as well. So we keep a record.
Such thing as too much reflection, we've decided.
No, get on. Yeah, we keep a record of our successes and our challenges, and there have been plenty of those over the course of this year as we've been implementing this alongside our German lessons. But we've maintained this regular checking in with each other and supporting each other throughout, and we believe that this has had a considerable impact on the changes that we're seeing in our classrooms. So I guess, what are we doing in our classes? And in a nutshell, when we teach, we start with listening activities. This is paramount. The oral input is absolutely essential, as we experienced ourselves in our German lessons. The listening is absolutely essential. So we start with listening activities, and then from there we move on to supported speaking, which we'll go into, then reading, and then shared and independent writing. And finally, we move on to independent spontaneous speaking. So what we are sharing are specific examples of activities that we've done in our German lessons, and we've adapted for our Japanese classrooms.
We thought we would just, in case anyone isn't familiar with TPRS and the way and what circling means, we just thought we'd do a little quick sort of a demonstration is not really the right word. We're just going to do this in English because we have different languages here, and we just want to show what it involves in case anyone isn't already aware, and if you are, sorry, it'll probably be boring. The teacher will start with a statement. You might have some kind of a visual up there as some visual support, and the teacher will start with a statement. And to that statement, we encourage the students, the whole class, to respond going, oh, and pretend like it's the most incredibly exciting information you've heard all day. And this is to build a sense of fun in the classroom, and to just by doing that and by deliberately having that sense of fun, it helps to break down some of our inhibitions, even for us as teachers. And then after we've made that statement, we might ask some simple yes/no questions to the whole class. Then we might ask some either/or questions. Then we might move on to a who, what, when, where, or why question. And then a recent development in TPRS methodology is to then do something called triangling, which is interesting. So we've had circling where we're going around the whole class, and then we have triangling where we might choose an individual student and ask them a question. And when we ask an individual student, we would be encouraging them and supporting them with the language that's displayed on the board to answer with a full sentence. And then eventually, once that strength has built in the students, then we do something called DTS, which stands for describe the situation. And that's when you're not responding to a question, you're just recapping as much as you can of the information, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 sentences, whatever you feel you're up to. So what it might look like is this. First of all, I'm going to call on the whole class, and the class will respond with an agreed response, and that might be different in whatever language. In our German class, we would say Klasse, the teacher would say Klasse, and the students say ja, but here we'll just do it in English. So class. Oh, thank you. What beautiful students you are. And then the teacher makes a statement. Class, there is a horse. Oh. Class.
Yes.
Oh. There is a cat. Oh. Class.
Yes.
Is there a horse?
Yes.
Yes, there is a horse. Oh, well done. So good. And class.
Yes.
Is there a cat?
Yes.
Class.
Yes.
Is there a dog?
No.
There's no dog. How ridiculous. There's a horse and a cat. So we've gone on. We've done some. Oh, I've moved on. Oh, what am I doing? Wrong slide. I'm moving. There we go. So we've got our yes, no answers. And then, okay, keep up there. And then we might ask some either or. Class.
Yes.
Is there a horse or a zebra? Oh, it's a horse. Excellent. So we ask some yes or no, some either or questions. Then we might move on to, don't know which one to move. Here we go. Sorry, I've got 2 computers going here. Who, what, when, where. So class, who is there, or what is there, I guess in this case. What is there? A horse. And so well done, fantastic, etc. And then I might ask Monique.
Yes.
Monique, is there a horse and a cat?
Yes. There is a horse and a cat.
Well done, Monique. Very nice, very nice, etc. And so we would ask the individual, and we might go around for a few different students in the class. And then once we've built up the familiarity with the language, then we move on to this describe the situation, and we might set a timer. And so, sorry, I can't remember. Was I going to be talking? We're going to talk about that later. I can't remember. The so with the
describe the situation demo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yes. So with the describe the situation, the teacher would demonstrate what looks like, what it might sound like first, and give a bit of an example, going nice and slowly. So there is a horse and there is a cat. There's no zebra, there's no dog. There's only a horse and a cat, etc. And the teacher would give a bit of an example of what that would look like, and then move over to the students. Thanks, Monique. Take it.
So, describe the situation is modelled by the teacher, as Catherine's just said, recapping the discussion in class so far, and then the students are given an opportunity to all practice at once. So in our online German classes, this is really easy. As we've said, we just mute our microphone and the teacher sets a timer, and we have some individual practice time to experiment with the language. And I find that this is really, I had German today, and I found that I love this option online where you can mute. And so I'm almost shadowing the teacher as he's giving a sample, describe the situation, and just to actually form the words, actually physically form the words. I find that it's been really, really helpful, just getting your mouth around these words and sounds. So we can refer to the PowerPoint slide with the vocab and sentence structure support if needed. And we showed you an example of that with the elephant. Or we can choose to look away and say what we can without the support, depending on our confidence with the language. So in this way, the learning activities are really easily differentiated. And that's what I love about this approach. In our face-to-face lessons, muting them with the mic isn't an option. Sometimes we'd like to be able to do that with our classes, but not an option, unfortunately. But the activity works perfectly well with the students just sitting in their place and talking to their hand. We've also encouraged them to talk to a shoe or talk to a wall or whatever they like. Once they've built up some strength in their language, they can also begin to retell the story to a partner, and the partner listens but can prompt with a question if needed. So the purpose of circling, triangling and describe the situation is always for the teacher to gauge the language that is strong and healthy in their students. So it's a great chance we just walk around and listen to the students as they're having a conversation, albeit a limited language conversation with their partner. And it's never used as an assessment task that it'd be corrected, but it really helps to direct our teaching. It's also a really useful measure for the students to gauge their own progress. And taking a few minutes at the end of the lesson every few weeks and have the students make an audio recording of what they can say about the class story so far can be a great way for them to really quantify the increase in language that they're able to produce. So after 10 weeks of lessons in our German class, our teacher challenged us to do a 10-minute describe the situation, a 1 minute per week goal, I suppose. At the time, Catherine and I were completely aghast, and we were convinced that this would just not be possible. But I managed 15, but Catherine managed a whopping 18 minutes of a describe the situation. I think that deserves a Hackshoe too. In our German lessons, our teacher, he's fantastic. He takes the time to respond to some of our audio recordings if we submit them to him. And what's great about doing this is that he'll make an audio recording response, and he reiterates what we've said to him, but from his perspective. And this is a great way to demonstrate the changes to verbs in German, depending on who's speaking. This response is a reiteration of what we've said ourselves. So our teacher knows that this is language that we're comfortable using, and that means that his responses is also fully comprehensible to us. So that's been a real game changer. As complete beginners in German, we quickly understood how important it was for us to hear the language, to get that oral input. But our classes are made up of 25 plus students, and we're not a small online adult class. So we needed to be creative and think of ways to maximise listening opportunities to keep the kids engaged. And gamifying is always well received with the kids, as I'm sure you can appreciate. So this is a short clip of one.
All right, so as the name suggests, a fundamental element of TPRS, teaching proficiency through reading and storytelling, a fundamental element is reading. After each of our German lessons, our teacher prepares a text for us to read for homework. The readings are, in my opinion, just a work of art. The reading after just our very first lesson was 265 words long. And it's made up almost entirely of words that we've already covered in class. But there may be the occasional extra word or two, but honestly only that many, just usually 1 or 2 extra words, and a translation is provided for those. And the intention is that we're able to read this text with ease. It's not meant to be laborious. And to support our reading, the teacher also makes a reading video where he reads through the story and has his pointer pointing to the words as he's going with the story up there on the screen. He also makes an audio recording of it for us. So the reading video, because that's a YouTube video, we can adjust the playback speed. If we want to hear it a little bit slower, we can play it back a bit slower, or we can increase it if we want to hear it a bit faster. But he also makes an audio recording. Sometimes we'll listen to the audio recordings while we're out on a walk or in the car on my commute to and from school. I'll listen to those for listening practice. There are so many activities that you can do with a text like this. Oh, you can also notice that the colors in there are color coding for the different gender in German. So, you know, these are activities that are often used in TPRS classrooms, but they're obviously not exclusive to a TPRS classroom, and perhaps you're already familiar with them. One that we particularly quite enjoy is called Volleyball Reading. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Volleyball Reading, but Volleyball Reading is where you can either have it with the teacher working with the whole class, and the teacher is person A and the class is person B, or then you can progress on to have it students working in partners. And so just to demonstrate what that would look like, so I'll say the first sentence, es gibt einen Elefanten, and then person B gives the translation,
which is, there is an elephant.
And then person B reads the next sentence in the target language.
Es gibt einen Elefanten, aber es gibt keinen Bären.
There is an elephant, but there isn't a bear. And it goes on like that. So it's called volleyball reading, or sometimes tennis reading, whatever you like to call it, but just back and forth between teacher and class. Monique and I will often do this as practice with our German text during the week over the phone. Again, while we're out on a walk with the dog. No, we need to have the text in front of us, so I guess not so much on the walk. But and the good thing about an activity like this is that you're taking a sample text that is full of accurate language, the language is all correct. And so the children are reading this accurate language over and over again. They're getting more repetitions of that. They're getting practice at saying it and hearing it. So it's all good for extra repetitions. Anyone who can read German, or even if you can't, you can probably see there's a lot of recycling of the language in the text, but it's not predictable. It's not the same sentence pattern over and over again. There's a lot of mixing the types of sentences around, and they're always full of lots of conjunctions and things like that that keep the language interesting. So yeah, you couldn't just read it and know what was going to come next. It's, you know, it does require some reading, so that's great. So this year, becoming a student of languages again, I've really felt the power of reading to enhance language acquisition. And we've been looking for ways to try to encourage our own students to read. These stories that we get after every lesson are almost the highlight of my week. I don't know what that says about me, but it's true. I love these stories so much, and I enjoy reading them. And they are easy to read, and it's not a chore. And I thought, oh, how can I get my students to have that joy and motivation to read. And it is such a different scenario with Japanese. It's not as easy to read, as we know, but I still wanted to somehow come up with some way to foster that in my students. So I was looking for something, literally it was keeping me awake at night, trying to think of something that would have that same sort of effect, perhaps. And so the idea that we came up with was a scavenger hunt. So first of all, I prepared some sentences, these 8 sentences in Japanese, which we're using language from our lessons. And we did an activity called Mind Reader, which you might be familiar with. It's one of the activities that Gianfranco Conti has. It's in one of his books and one of his ideas. And so for that activity, you have these 8 sentences. You have just a list of sentences on the board, and the teacher says, I'm thinking of one of these sentences. Students, can you read my mind and work out which sentence I'm thinking of? In order to read the teacher's mind, they have to read the sentence out to say it. So Monique, give it a go.
Otoko no ko ga imasen.
Otoko no ko ga imasen. Let me bring my, otoko no ko ga imasen. So sometimes I would usually actually have my sentences numbered in class when we were doing this, and I might then say to the class, oh, which number did Monique read? And so I'm involving the rest of the class in that, and then, oh, and what does that sentence mean? And all of those things that you can also do. Monique, very nicely read, but Zannen. No, that is not the one I was thinking of. Keita-san, what do you think it might be? Can you read my mind? Oh, how did you know? Okay. Yeah, so whatever it is. So then we're reading, and then it would be Keita's turn to come up to the front, and he gets to pick the sentence, and we just write that on the number on a piece of paper, and they stand at the front, and the other students have to try and read the student's mind. So of course the students want to be the student up the front who gets to choose the sentence. I've had students who normally would not be very forthcoming at putting their hand up or offering to read something in Japanese, having a go at that. If they aren't sure, they get to hear other students reading it first, and then the next time it's a different student up the front with their sentence. Maybe the first sentence at the top of the list there, otoko no ko ga imasu, is probably the one that's going to be easiest for my students. So the hands are up, they want to be the one to read that one, whatever it might be. But eventually, they're all having a go at reading those. So we did that. So we did the mind reader activity. That's a lot of fun. But then after that, we went out, they worked in pairs. This sheet, and it says team members at the top, because they worked in pairs, and they had a team, and they had to go out into the wild, into the school grounds, and around the school I had placed 8 pictures that matched with these sentences. And so they had to find the pictures, which were easy enough to find, but finding the pictures wasn't well, that was fun, but the trick then was to match it with a sentence. And if you look at these ones for the Japanese speaking teachers here, the trickiest one of them was certainly this second picture here, because it matched with the second sentence, otoko no ko ga imasen. There is no boy. There's a man, there's a woman, and there's a girl, but there's no boy. So that was a little bit of a cryptic one, but it was also interesting because we've got the third picture there with the boys and the girls matches with the third sentence, onna no ko to otoko no ko ga imasu, which, so it was an interesting point to bring up with the students that, plurals doesn't matter so much in Japanese. So that was really good. And I've just got a couple of little videos, using the wrong thing again.
Yeah. So alongside extensive listening, supported speaking, and a variety of reading activities, we're also wanting to integrate a variety of writing activities. So Write and Discuss is something that Catherine and I love doing in German, and it turns out our students have also really enjoyed it. And I think it's because it is a really collaborative approach to writing, with all the students sharing input and also because the teacher can support the students by asking questions to clarify and support or scaffold along the way. The teacher reinforces correct language, and it also forces us to go really slow doing it this way. For an example, using the horse and cat story, we might say, class, what was there? Ah, and someone says, there was a horse. That's right. And then we're modeling the writing. There was it a horse or was it a unicorn? Oh, a horse, yes. There was a horse. Was there also a dog? No, that's right. No, there wasn't. There wasn't a dog. What else was there? Ah, there was a cat. Oh, yeah, there's a cat. So we're modeling that and discussing it. So I think having that interaction, that actual conversation with the teacher and the class is really powerful, and something that I wasn't doing enough of prior to doing this story narrative approach, is actually having more of a conversation with the class. So that's write and discuss.
And it's so good because there's no prep. You don't need to do any preparation. It's just something you can do if you've got 10 minutes spare at the end of a lesson. Oh, let us know what we've been talking about today. Give us some ideas and I'll write them up on the board, and we just write it up, and and then we can use that text and for something the following week again as well. Yeah.
Around the world writing, Catherine.
Yes. So I don't know if I'm at the right slide, but anyway. So there's another sort of similar activity. So that one was where the teacher is doing the writing on the board, but an activity that I did with I've done a couple of times with my students is something called Around the World Writing. And I just use pieces of paper like this. And sorry, people at home. And I gave each student one of these pieces of paper, and I put a timer on the screen for 33 seconds. And they had 33 seconds to write a sentence, 2 sentences, whatever they could. And when the timer finished, they stopped writing. And then they would pass their piece of paper to the person next to them. And, we're going around the world. So you'd get the paper from the person before you. And then they had to look at the paper and see what sentence had been written before. And we were recapping this story that we've been working on in class. So they would read the sentence, because then they were hopefully going to write something that followed on from that, or at the very least, they couldn't repeat the same sentence. So they had to read it to see what had been written before, and then they would, and then I'd put the timer on again for 33 seconds and they'd write again. And so we went around probably maybe 10 turns of that, going around, passing the piece of paper around, and at the end of that we had these pieces, this was that 60 words, so 70, I don't know, about 75 words written. And I had one of these for every student in the class. Some of them maybe just got to the end of one page. Some of them were halfway through a second page, depending on who was in that group and whether some of them managed to write a couple of sentences in one go. But the next day, I was saying to the students, so that activity that we did yesterday, where we did the writing around the world, everyone wrote that little bit on each piece of paper, and each piece of paper was at least a full page, one of these little half-size pieces of paper, but each was that full page, if not a page and a half. So everyone in this class has written at least a page of writing. And I just wanted them to realize, how much they'd done. And this one boy who, is just a middle of the road student, he's, I wouldn't have picked him as, in general, an enthusiastic writer, and he said, that was so much fun, can we do it again? I don't, sometimes you don't even know what's going to click with them, but they loved it, and they just loved the process of passing it around and all contributing to this little writing passage. So that was that.
Catherine, we've just had a request on chat. Could you just hold that up, the piece of paper up closer? We've just. You
want to see the handwriting? Okie dokie. No one in the room got to see a close up. So yeah, we did this in Romaji, Japanese teachers, because when I really can't bear to. No, look, it's fine. It's fine. I can do this. It says, for the people who are here, otoko no ko ga imasu, pizza to hamburger ga arimasen. Nice use of, nice distinction between imasu and arimasu. I'm very happy. Otoko no ko ga imasen, koala ga imasen, kangaroo ga imasen, penguin ga imasen. Penguin spelled nice in Japanese way, etc. Gojira wa nihon ga suki desu. Gary-san wa Ururu ni imasu. Gary, etc. There's a lot of different types of sentences in there, so that was lovely. And yeah, we write it in Romaji because it's time pressured, and we're just trying to get the words down on paper. It's not about writing in script, because that would slow them down and that would make them think too much. The other thing that I don't do, that I don't allow, and that has something to do with the state of the writing, but I don't give them an eraser. They do not have a rubber, because if they did, they would start questioning themselves, and they would rub something out, and then they'd end up with nothing. 33 seconds are up and they've got nothing. I was like, no rubbers, just cross it out, just keep writing, it's fine. And we're not looking for beautiful handwriting. I often remind them that I'm not their English teacher, and they're lucky about that. And I use it as an excuse to be a little bit messy myself on the board. But anyway, not when I'm writing in Japanese. I like to keep that beautiful. But anyway, okay, so that's around the world writing.
So now another activity is elimination game, the elimination game. So in this game, students work in pairs, and they have 5 minutes to write down as many sentences as possible. Again, we're using Romaji here because the focus for this activity isn't, it's not a script writing task. It's what's the language in your head. And it's almost like a brain dump, I suppose, where we get a bit of a snapshot of what is the language that has been acquired, that they have there, that they can easily produce. So in pairs, they jot down as many sentences as possible. And then the teacher will say
the main character in our story, Gary's son.
Not some random. Not Gary. And so the aim is to be the group with the most sentences still on the board. So the teacher will say, without looking at their whiteboards, or there is a boy. And so all the groups that have written down otoko no ko ga imasu, they rub out that sentence, and then the teacher picks another sentence. So they rub them off as they go. That's why it's called the elimination game. And the team at the end, the pair at the end that still have sentences on their board are the winners. And that's been really well received by the class.
When I did this with my classes, the students had come up with such a variety of sentences. There was no way that I could possibly say all of the different combinations that they'd come up with. So eventually I just said, that's it, I concede, you win. You know, it was me versus all of you, and you won that one. And then I had the students, the groups that were left, share a sentence that they still had left on their board. So then it was nice opportunity for the students to share their sentences. And, you know, if the grammar's a bit whatever, we just repeat it to them back correctly and don't make a big deal of it. It's fine.
That's right. And like, as we've experienced in our own German classes, we really, really relished the repetition of the language, and we knew that that was essential to slow down so we could strengthen our language. But in our mainstream classes, we needed to find ways to recycle the same language. And so that's why the elimination game has become really, really popular. It's a chance for the students for us to recycle that in ways like scavenger hunt. So it's all recycled, but it's presented in a different way. So the students, the novelty's there. They are tricked into realising it's recycling the same language. So the timed writes is up next, Catherine.
Yeah. And so this is very similar to this, and same piece of paper, as you can see. That's what this piece of paper is normally for. So for this one, the students get one of these sheets of paper, they write their name on it. 5 minutes is the time limit. They have 5 minutes to write as much as they can of the story that we've been talking about. And we did this once I don't know, we'd done it halfway through last term, and then I did another one. It must have been just at the end of last term we did the second one. There'd been at least over a month in between the two timed writes. And so you can see the word count at the top there, 79, because he actually went onto another piece of paper, but I haven't got that in the photo. 79 words, and the plus 22 there, I was just writing that for my own reference after he collected. The student hasn't seen that as such yet, but that's the increase in word count on the one that we'd done earlier. And almost all students had written more words in their second one, which is fairly, to be expected. But even those who perhaps hadn't necessarily written more, the quality of what the types, the sentence structures and all of that had improved. So it's not just about quantity, obviously, but and again, same thing, it's written in Romaji. It's a 5-minute timed write, and I'm walking around the class and I'm saying, you've got 3 minutes to go, 2 minutes to go, and you're putting that little bit of extra pressure on, because it just helps the children to oh, okay, I want to get this done. Oh, and I want to get this done. And I also find I have to, we almost always start with this otoko no ko gaimasu, which is the first sentence that we said at the beginning of this story. And I said, just write that one to start with, because it just gets you started, and it'll, everything will start to flow after that. So so we did that. That's also been, and it's so easy because it's just 5 minutes. It takes no time at all to do that little task, and it gives you again a really good idea. And as a teacher, I can look at that and go, oh, okay, so we haven't quite, maybe the earlier ones, I'm noticing that everyone was just saying hamburger ga imasen, and okay, definitely need to cover that a little bit more, that we need to use arimasu for that, etc. So that's the timed write. And so all of these activities, we were doing all of these different myriad of activities over the course of 2 terms. And the describe the situation audio recordings that my students had done, the very first ones that we did back early to mid term 2 were 20 to 30 seconds in length, and that was great, and that was fine. And we've just finally, it took us 2 full terms to finish this story that I really thought would be a term's work, but I slowed it down, and it's been great. I'm so glad I did, and we've really covered it very thoroughly. And now I just last week I had the students do another one, and this was straight back after the holidays. We did a little bit of recapping, a couple of little activities, which are another one that I'm going to show you in a moment, but in class. But then I just got them to record themselves retelling our class story. And some students, some year 5 students and year 6 students spoke for, well, most spoke for 2 minutes. Minimum, maybe 2 to 3 minutes was pretty, a good number of students did that. Some spoke for 5 minutes, 6 minutes. I had one student almost 8 minutes talking, retelling the story. And we had also talked about not just retelling the story, but then if you were looking for more things to say, how could you use that language to talk about yourself? So in our story, there's a boy and his name is Gary, but I'm not a boy, I'm a woman, and my name is Tominaga Sensei, and and things like that. Or what else could you say? And Gary has a pet echidna. Well, I have a pet, but I don't have a pet echidna. I have this, and all of this sort of thing. And so they were doing all of that sort of language as well. But yeah, talking for 5 or 6, but quite a few students spoke for a really decent length of time, and that was lovely, and that was really empowering for them. Obviously, that in itself is a huge motivator for the students. And I had one student who came, he said, I spoke for almost 2 minutes or something. And I went, oh, that's fantastic. He goes, yeah, the first one I did was 45 seconds. So he's going, it's more than twice what I did last time. So, he was thrilled with that, and it was great. So that's that. Another activity that I did probably in a little bit of preparation sort of for that speaking, to get them comfortable with talking through our story. These are pictures that represent different elements of our story, and I have them as a PowerPoint. So that's just a screenshot of all the different PowerPoint slides. And one student comes up to the front of the class and stands with their back to the screen, and they can't see what I'm projecting up on the screen, which will be just one of those slides, not all of them. But the student at the front has a folder like this that has the printout of all of the possible options, and then the students in the class can see the picture that I've projected on the screen, and they have to say sentences in Japanese describing what they can see, and the student here has to work out which picture they're describing. And so I call it Pictionary. I don't know if that's what Pictionary, I have so long since I played Pictionary, I can't even remember, but anyway, that's what I call it. And the students have loved that, and we did that. So we would do multiple students having a turn at the front, but not time to get through the whole class. So then I had enough of these folders made up so that then they could work with a partner or work in small groups and just play the game in their own groups. And I've even done it with, I've done it with some Year 3 students, and we were describing these morphed animals, these crazy creatures, and that was also extremely funny because yeah, when the pictures go up on the screen, they go, crazy. Anyway, but they loved describing that and trying to work all of that out. So there's so many different ways that you can use that activity. It's been a real hit. Yeah, and for those, when the children were describing the story and recording themselves describing it, I did give them a card like this, a printout of this picture that has all of those pictures that are describing the elements of our story, just as a little visual reminder, because I know from my German experience, when I'm trying to record myself speaking in German, you just sort of freeze and you forget what you're talking about, and you think, oh, and for me, and like when we did that 10-minute recording, that, you know, did go for a bit longer, but I remember the first time that the 18 minutes wasn't my first attempt. I'd started recording, and I go, okay, got you 10 minutes, right? And so I started talking, and then I just got to a point and I froze, and I should have just let it be, but you know, I can't, and I froze. And so I stopped the recorder. I knew I hadn't done 10 minutes. I stopped the recorder and I went, oh, I've done 7 minutes? You're kidding. Oh, okay, I probably can do this. And so that's what encouraged me to go on to do this, the full 18. But anyway, but yeah, so I know what it feels like when you're trying to speak in this other language and you just freeze and you can't think of anything anymore. So that's why we started providing these picture prompts, and that's been really helpful to the students. And I say to them, go through the whole story, and when you get to the end, go back to the beginning, because no doubt there'll be things that you didn't say the first time through. So just do it again. And then we talked about, as I said earlier, about them relating to themselves as well. So trying to move on here. Sorry, gosh, we're going for a long time. And so with our German classes, Monique is very fortunate in her timetabling, because the German lessons are during the day. Our German lessons are during the day on a Thursday. And so I'm teaching. But Monique has been very fortunate with her timetabling that she just has this little window and she can join the class live. So lucky her. But it's a little bit jealous, I'm looking a bit green. But so I mostly take the lessons asynchronously. I can't be there live except for during the holidays. And so the lessons are recorded and I view the video afterwards. And when you view the video afterwards, you pretend like you are there in the room. And when the teacher is asking a question to Monique or to one of the other students in the class, I just pretend I'm Monique and I answer the questions as well. And so in a way, you get to do even more practice than if you were there live in the room. But other things that our teacher has done for us to help us with our learning is with our acquisition process is he makes these little review videos, and he'll have that screen like with the vocab, with the elephant, etc. Not the elephant, but you know, whatever it might be, whatever language we're talking about. And he makes a video and he's asking us questions like we're in the class, and he'll say class, and we'll go, yeah. And they're watching it at home on my own. But it's just full on question and answer practice the whole time. And then he'll also say, okay, pause the video for a moment and recap what you can do. So we've made videos like those for our students as well, as a good way to review what language has been covered in our lessons that day. And if a student has missed the lesson, we can say, oh, you might want to look at the review video. My primary school students don't often take that initiative, but that's okay. And when I had to have a relief teacher one day, I said, oh, I've got a review video here here's one I made earlier. Just watch that with the class and join in with them and have a go at answering my questions, and it's like as if I'm there in the room. And so that's been a really useful little resource, and another idea that I got from our German lessons. And Monique has been, she is in regional Victoria, so not quite as harsh a lockdown as other parts of Victoria, but she's been doing a lot of remote teaching and has been able to use those sorts of ideas as well. I'll move on. We're almost there. We're almost there, everyone. Sorry.
So just in wrapping up, so there's been lots and lots of changes that have happened in our classes as a result of this German project, if you will. But the big thing with the increase in student motivation, Catherine and I, our motivation also increased. And when we were reflecting on why this is, it's because we were experiencing those three key psychological needs were met in the self-determination theory. So autonomy, we had control over our lessons and how we were delivering them, stepping outside of our comfort zone a little bit, but we had control over that. That was our choice. Competency, we were experiencing success because our students were experiencing success, and there was relatedness there too. More connection, closer connection with the kids because it was very, very personalised learning, asking questions to the kids. Like we said before, we were almost like language parents more so than language teachers because it was all about the communication and conversation. And there was relatedness too with Catherine and I. So we were experiencing a connection there, which, you know, I really valued. It was the best PD that I've been involved in a very long time. So with those three elements that we were experiencing, autonomy, competency and relatedness more in our class, we had the buzz that the buzz boy spoke of in the video. So yeah, we're still chasing that buzz. That's motivated us. So
just a few, you know, things that we've already spoken about, but they're all the different types of things that we've done. But yeah.
And yeah, so if you're interested, there's some, and this will become made available to you, so you'll be able to have access to these resources that Catherine and I, we're quite nerds with it actually, with our podcasts and things, but these are the cream of the crop. They're really thoroughly recommend these ones if you're interested in looking into this process a little bit more.
We've got access to the slideshow for everyone, minus the videos, but Monique will share the link to her video later if you like, but minus my student videos. But on that PowerPoint, all of these are links that take you directly to those resources. So you'll be able to check them out. And this one here is the conference that we attended in April, and all of those sessions are available on YouTube and everyone can watch those. Yeah, The Motivated Classroom, if you haven't listened to that podcast, so good. This is a new book that's coming out next year, and this is the YouTube channel for the person who wrote this one, which also has lots of great, they're all so good. All of those resources are brilliant. Yeah, Terry Walsh's book on TPRS with Chinese characters is great for Japanese teachers as well, if you haven't already seen that one. And that's a QR code that will take you to the presentation today. So if you want to scan that, you can get the link to the presentation, and there are our contact details, except you can't see those here. But anyway.
And also, Catherine, if anyone is interested in taking up German, there is a new class commencing from this coming Saturday, and that's TPRS style. So if you're interested, you can contact Catherine or myself with more information for that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, did anyone have any questions? No time for questions. Sorry, we talked for too long.
I've got a comment.
Oh, yes. You can get a word in edgeways.
Yeah.
It doesn't, yeah, it's not like.
Oh, because of the thing. How do I get rid of that? How do I get rid of that? That should be there. Oh, wow. Oh, that's not what I want to do. Okay, you can come up and scan it on here. Everyone, it's right here on my screen. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, here we go. Here's the link. There we go.
I've just got a comment to make. This has been great, and it must be the week for it, because last Thursday at the Gold Coast monthly MLTAQ meeting, we had Giovanni Piccarello do a Mandarin lesson for us with TPRS with a whole room of language teachers, which went really well, and we got a lot out of that. And I'm also writing a paper at the moment about my experiences learning as a language teacher. I'm a Japanese language teacher, but learning other languages. So I've done over the last couple of years, I've done Griffith's first year German, first year Italian, first year Spanish, and first year Chinese class. And just a couple little things that are a little bit different to this, but that came up. I thought I have a non-threatening classroom, and this is university students I'm talking about. But in the Chinese class, I can remember when they were coming around one by one, and I like to do this too, go around the class and ask the questions. Monique said repetition's really good. And for example, you know, what is your birthday? So they keep hearing the question over again, and I think, oh, this is a good thing. But when I was in the Chinese class, they were asking, what's your birthday? And mine's the 7th of April, but I couldn't remember the word for 7. And so I was really stressed. They're getting closer and closer to me. What am I going to do? And in the end, I said it was the 6th of April. And they didn't know, because I could remember the word for 6, and they didn't know when my birthday was anyway. So I got away with it.
Yeah, good.
But I realised how stressful that can be. And as the teacher, I've always thought of it being non-threatening. So now I make a big point to tell that little story and say, you know, you can always say pass when I ask you a question, and you know how you know every question that the teacher asks, except for the one that they ask you. That's a stress thing too. And the other thing was making pairs. I think it was in the Spanish class that I was going to a different class because of a timetable clash. So I wasn't with the same students on the Monday as I was with on the Thursday. And when the teacher said, okay, work in pairs now, I didn't have a pair. And that felt really, you know, lonely. And I felt left out, whereas the teacher just said, I go into pairs, and didn't really think twice. And I found out when we were teaching online too, we'd put people online into groups, into pair groups, but students just left all of a sudden that happened. I think they didn't have the confidence, and because on Collaborate Ultra that we were using at Griffith, it was a random selection of students, and 5 students would leave the class. Wow. And so, you know, I make a big point now at my university classes when I say we're going to do pair work, I actually go around and say pair this, and make sure that every student has a pair. And, you know, if there's an odd number, I'll put 3 there, or I'll work with, you know, the student left out too. So just little things, you know, that I've learned
by being a student
along the way. Actually, the first lesson back face to face, I actually stood at the door and said, right, we're going to do pair work now. You cannot leave the room. And they all laughed because they knew exactly what I was talking about. And it'd been annoying. It's annoying for, you know, the good students too, when suddenly their partners leave, and then they're left there in this virtual room
on their own.
On their own.
No good.
It's okay. I think Kata wants to say a couple of words to finish up.
Okay. Yes.
For the outfit virtual audience. Yeah, you are.
Hi. I may add a comment as well. I think we hear lots of things about benefits of learning languages. We hear something like employment opportunities and neurological benefits. But for students' motivations, I think it's really important to ensure they use the language in more communicative ways, and those things will have more positive impacts on their motivation. And also, I think for language teachers or for any teachers, it's quite easy to, once we find a way that works, we kind of want to repeat that, and we don't. So it's really good and brave that you decided to, I guess, develop an identity as a learner of a language. As you said, it's not something that many teachers can do.
I don't think, I don't know, I'm trying to think. Do you think a maths teacher or a science teacher could understand what it's like for that beginner student? Again, I just don't think, you know.
You can undo
Yeah,
knowledge.
exactly. And whereas with languages, you take a new, maybe with a different instrument, but it's quite, the musical instrument seems quite transferable too. But
I
hey,
think
once
that,
you can do
yeah,
one, you can do lots. But anyway,
makes it what you say in the classroom much more powerful than saying like you have to do this, this, this.
And
or
both Monique and
I'm
I
learning
have,
a language as well, and this way
Yeah.
works better.
both
So,
Monique and I have shared with our students how we're now learning a language too, and why we're doing that. And our students have been very interested. Oh, say some German for us, but but also they're really interested in, oh, why are you doing that? And yeah, it's been really it's been also very good.
yes. So thank you very much for Catherine and Monique. Thank you very much for today's session. So we might conclude today's Language Teachers Forum. Thank you very much. So we are going to have another session on the 11th of November, presented by Selina McCluskey about Japanese language immersion. So if you're interested, you are welcome to come back again in a month.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
everyone.
much.
Thanks for coming online, everyone.
Thank you very much.
And if anyone wants my QR code, it's there. I might just stop the recording.